President Trump is recovering from the coronavirus, and so is America. Together, we rose to meet the challenge, protecting our seniors, getting them life-saving drugs in record time, sparing no expense. President Trump tackled the virus head-on, as leaders should.
I can't imagine that anybody could be doing more.
We'll get through this together.
Let's stop right there for a moment. This was a campaign ad that Donald Trump put out. And that spot by Fauci, I can't imagine anybody would do more. Fauci came out and basically said, my words were taken out of context, and I did not give my permission to be in that video. Nevertheless, he's there. Now, the fact that Fauci is there gets across that Donald Trump understands that Fauci is infinitely more respected and looked to for information as opposed to anybody else in Donald Trump's circle or administration. CDC, World Health Organization, etc., those are considered trusted sources. Donald Trump and his cronies are not. At least most people get the memo. Trump has been having difficult times. Recently, to put it mildly, he played the first debate wrong, believing that he can get lefties to go against Joe Biden, not understanding that lefties were already broken in. And so it doesn't matter that Joe Biden were going to attack him. Those lefties were still going to vote for that Joe Biden. That's playing it wrong. People say you should have just let Joe Biden talk. And to be honest, despite many of the failures that Trump has, he can make a case for himself, especially if it got into the foreign policy arena and issues of economics. The stimulus doesn't seem to get passed. I mean, Nancy Pelosi is not accepting 1.8 trillion, and instead is forcing a 2.2 trillion at a time where even the people on the left say take the deal. You have a pudgy body full of COVID-19, or at the very least you did, which means you got caught by a disease that you continuously downplayed, which was God's justice of sorts. Now, you bolted out of the hospital angry and belligerent on Twitter, attacking everything in your path. But that was your own fault that you got COVID-19. And then the election looks bleak. The election looks bleak. And an article in the New York Times apparently pissed him off royally. Basically saying Trump runs the kind of campaign he likes to run. Brash, attacking, playing to his base. But that may not necessarily be the thing that you need to win that race. And there needs to be a certain diligence and a focus. And neither of those are things that are associated with Trump. And so that's the basic argument. And you have this kind of finger pointing that's taking place in the campaign that knows is going down in flames. And many of the Republicans know that the campaign is going down in flames. Now, it's not a flat fact because it hasn't happened yet. And honestly, you could have an enthusiasm boost in the sense of Trump in certain areas, especially in various swing states. You may have certain people that don't go to the polling because they get sick and tired of it. And so you never know. But it looks bleak for him. He's feeling all of that pressure. He also knows that if he is no longer president, then he could be prosecuted, potentially by zealous prosecutors trying to get Donald Trump's head, to scalp him for some kind of tax fraud or tax law, running afoul of some kind of tax law. So, and then, after all of these other pressures, you got that goddamn Fauci on 60 Minutes. Trump, he exploded. He couldn't take it. And Donald Trump, on a campaign call, goes all in on Fauci. Now, he goes in on this call knowing full well that Fauci is going to hear it and that the public is going to hear it and it's going to be immediately leaked. And he did it because he wanted Fauci to hear it, basically. And he wanted the world to hear him telling it. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. Trump just seems so hurt here. He's angry, he's belligerent. I gotta be honest, he sounds inebriated in the way that he's informing his words. I'm going to let you hear it for yourself. But this tweet came out recently. I think, when was this? Today at 2 p.m. So 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago. Dr. Tony Fauci says we don't allow him to do television, and yet I saw him last night on 60 Minutes, and he seems to get more airtime than anybody since the late, great Bob Hope. All I ask of Tony is that he make better decisions. He said no mask and let China in, also bad arm. P.S. Tony should stop wearing the Washington Nationals mask for 2 reasons. Number 1, it's not up to the high standards that he should be espousing. Oh, wow. Number 2, it keeps reminding me that Tony threw out perhaps the worst first pitch in the history of baseball. So basically, just being a dick. Just being a dick. Straight up, outright, remorselessly being a dick. He's angry that Fauci got that spot, and angry that the public looks at Fauci as a source of information. And that anger is spilling out, of course, on Twitter, but also on his campaign calls. There's more to this call, by the way, but I'm going to let you hear this part first. Look, in the very beginning, Fauci went along with this notion of saying de-emphasizing mask wearing. He did so because there weren't enough to go around, because the President of the United States didn't use his powers to ensure that there were masks, ventilators, protective equipment for the nurses and the staff all throughout the United States, didn't compel the companies to make the drugs, didn't do all of the things that a president would be necessary to do, get those drugs at a decent price, in addition to ensuring that each and every person that was infected would get health care, if not Medicare for all, Medicare for everyone with COVID-19. Those are things that are within the discretion and the power of the president, that this president, incompetent, didn't do. Fact of the matter is, if we would have started wearing masks early on, if the president would have pushed for people to wear masks early on, he would have been able to get his economy up and running far faster. And the public would have given him a pass on that, because they would have considered it an issue of the virus, not an issue of his leadership and his policy positions. That position, and you could see it in the polling when you look at it, it changed. And even from the standpoint of the way the public viewed Trump's handling of the economy versus Biden handling of the economy, that for the longest time stayed in Trump's favor, eventually ticked into Biden's. I'm making the point that if you would have dealt with the virus as a real thing, if you would have dealt with the human need of the virus, you would be far better off right now. It was within your discretion. It was within your power. You made a choice that the economy mattered more than the human beings in your system. And being too stupid to realize that the issue was the virus. And that if you would have dealt with the virus in real terms, you would have got your economy up and running. And so you fail at dealing with both. You fail at dealing with the virus, and you fail at the economic component of this. But he's angry. So I'm going to let you hear his call. Look, Fauci was right on this. And if Trump would have handled this correctly, Trump would be in a far stronger position in this race right now. And that fault belongs entirely to Trump. But let's hear him. He sounds, like I said, he sounds inebriated here, but you tell me.
I'm tired of COVID. I have the biggest rallies I've ever had, and we have COVID. People are saying whatever. Just people are tired of COVID. I have the biggest rallies I've ever had, and we have COVID. People are saying whatever. Just leave us alone. They're tired of it. People are tired of hearing Fauci and all these idiots, these people that have gotten it wrong. Fauci's a nice guy. He's been here for 500 years. He's a disaster. I mean, this guy's, if I listened to him, we'd have 500,000 deaths.
And
Fauci got it right, actually. Donald Trump had been listening to another scientist that wasn't telling him the stuff that Fauci was saying. Fauci was basically saying, this is going to get bad, this is going to get worse, we need to have more masks, we need to start doing this and that. And Trump kept saying, we're going to get it open by this date. It's not going to be that bad. It's not that bad, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, downplaying something that he knew going all the way back to February was going to be harmful. I was absolutely correct on this, going all the way back to then. I kept saying that Donald Trump had people, Americans, in the World Health Organization because we were one of the largest contributors. And as we had people in that organization, he was getting information out that was letting him know how bad this actually was. The tapes that you heard of Donald Trump in the interview basically saying exactly that. He decided to downplay this virus. Fauci had to take a position based on Trump's incompetence. Meaning, if you have to deal with real world phenomena. The president and Congress doesn't do their job to ensure that the public has enough of the things that they need from the standpoint of mask and protective equipment and so forth. Because they don't do that, well, now the medical establishment is in a situation of we have lack. We don't have enough. We have a pandemic on our hands and we don't have enough equipment and supplies to mind the gap. So what do? Do you go out and tell everybody to get a mask when you know that that's going to deprive people who are in the medical sector of those supplies? Or do you de-emphasize it until you can catch up? Fauci chose to de-emphasize it, in which the World Health Organization and the CDC, all of them had that policy. So it's not just a Fauci thing. It was something that they decided to do for political reasons, basically, but more so because the people didn't have enough equipment to go around. That's more of a deficit in the president's and Congress, not in Fauci himself. But from the standpoint of going about it, Fauci was right most of the time. In fact, Donald Trump was listening to, I can't think of the woman's name, but she was basically giving him these rosy pronouncements. And because she was giving, it was what he wanted to hear. He didn't want to hear what Fauci was saying. He wanted to hear what this woman was saying. And, well, you saw what happened. The cases are getting worse. He is having these rallies. He also caught COVID-19. So there goes that. And I'm making the point that in that Rose Garden meeting with all these people wearing masks, Trump looked at wearing masks as if it was unmanly. Think about how ridiculous that is. How manly was it to get dragged to the hospital? I think I have COVID. President of the United States. That's not that manly either. Coughing on the phone when people know you're full of COVID. Not that manly. So, wear the mask. And you ended up wearing the mask anyway, which makes it that much sadder. Meaning, if you got bit in the form where you ended up wearing the mask anyway, then you should have worn it in the first goddamn place. That shows failure, and that shows that you were wrong. And you can't even deal with that part. Instead, you're just flailing and attacking Fauci. Look, Fauci, whatever you want to say about Fauci, he is popular. And this will get brownie points, but that's not about brownie points, is it, Trump? This is about having your feelings hurt. That's what this is about. I had an alcoholic grandfather, and he would flail out in similar ways when his feelings were hurt by somebody, by my grandmother, who was just a better person. This is the other part to this that is not in the video. So Maggie Haberman, I haven't had a call from the New York Times in 2 years, says the president, who spoke to 40 minutes with Peter Baker just before his speech to the RNC less than 2 months ago. So line of her statement. The president of the United States is unhappy about Alex Burns and my story, saying that his supporters don't give a shit about the Times. Siepen began to call by mentioning a series of metrics and soundly committed to the plan they're trying to execute in the final 2 weeks. This is the story about the New York Times. So I'm going to go through that and do a video on that separately. Now Trump says his relationship with Meadows is good. In private, the president has been railing about Meadows. On the call, he says, "I love Mark Meadows," denies that he's thinking about getting rid of him after Election Day. The president tells staff on the call that the Wall Street Journal is working on an important piece. The Wall Street Journal is working on an important piece. People are tired of COVID, the president says. People are tired of hearing Fauci and the other idiots. Fauci is a nice guy. He's been here 5 years. You guys have heard that part. People are doing a great job. He said if he was asked 2 weeks ago, he might not have said he was going to win. Don't feel sorry for me. Don't say, how the hell does he do it? Trump says of his schedule. That's weird. Don't feel sorry for me. Don't say, how the hell does he do it? Trump says of his schedule. He's vacillating between these different states of mind. But the wild part about this is he is ragging on Fauci. Now they couldn't play the other part on CNN where he basically said people don't give a shit about the COVID stuff. The interesting thing is teasing a piece for the Wall Street Journal also. How do you know that the Wall Street Journal is working on an interesting piece? I would imagine they would have had to contact somebody in his administration to get some kind of comment or something to give some indication of where they were going with the story. So he teased that part out. But I have to be honest, the attacks on Fauci just seems uncalled for. Fauci's been right. You've been wrong. And you ended up with COVID-19. He is not. Like, share, and subscribe. Yeah, I think Trump's losing it. I mean, I think he's under a lot of pressure. And he seems to be flipping out a bit. Let's just say it that way. He seems to be flipping out. I'm going to leave this here, but, I think these guys are feeling pressure going into the last, 2 weeks, I suppose, and 2 or 3 weeks. And Trump, it looks like he's going to lose, but, like I said, there's no flat fact way to know that. But it doesn't look great for him, at least based on the polling evidence. And even if you give all sorts of caveats to Trump, it still looks kind of bad for him. When you get into the swing states, a little different picture. But mostly, I guess my point is, he's probably feeling all sorts of pressure right now. And I would imagine that will come out in certain ways. He's probably belligerent, angry. He sees Fauci on 60 Minutes. Fauci gets basically the club and the axe. And he tries to protect the circle in regards to running the race. I'm going to have another video on that one. This notion of, the finger pointing, one thing, but also this notion of running where you feel most comfortable. But where you feel most comfortable is not exactly where you need to be in order to succeed. And how, if you feel most comfortable, it seems right. It seems logical to function in that way. And yet, it's not what it takes to win, especially in the presidential contest for a second time around. Beyond that point, Trump has all sorts of problems in regards to the failures that avail him. And any of those failures, in and of themselves, would have been difficult to win a race. And he has multiples. All of these evictions, all of these people losing their jobs, all of these people who basically don't have food and whatnot. I mean, all of the people at the food banks and the food lines that seems to be going out for blocks on end, people waiting for hours in those things. No, not to mention the deaths. 200,000, more than 200,000, I think it's like 215 at this point. Those numbers are still continually going up. Even the number of people who are collecting unemployment, that are new people collecting unemployment. And so those aren't things that seem to be abated or seem to be to abate anytime soon. And so you have that stuff going directly into the election. Nancy Pelosi doesn't have any impetus or any incentive to give Trump a deal. The misery of the country, in this case, helps her cause, because it seems all of the stuff gets stuffed at the president's foot. And it seems like the president doesn't want to accept 2.2 trillion, which she's right about. By the same token, it's so close to the election, no immediate stimulus is going to have any real impact on the electoral result. I could be wrong. And even if it did, it's the right thing to do to give the 1.8 trillion. I mean, if the deal is anywhere near close, what I mean by that is I'm in agreement with these people who say, look, people are suffering. Deal with the suffering. And this is not the time to play politics. All of these other times where people have been trying to push their Democrats to do politics, now they're trying to do it when the public actually needs the money. Look, I'm going to end this here. I'm going to say like and share and subscribe. Thanks all. I'll see you guys in a few.